They say every home hides its own secrets, but mine hid the kind that could destroy a soul. Behind the walls where laughter once echoed, fear began to whisper instead. The place that was supposed to protect me became the place that broke me. And how all this happened, let's start from the beginning. Before continuing, please subscribe and tell me where you're watching this story from, because what I'm about to tell you is still unbelievable. My name is Emma Coleman, and I was born in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, in 1951. Now, at 73, I sit on my porch each evening, watching the sun fall behind the hills, wondering how many years it takes to forgive a childhood that never gave you peace. This isn't a story of revenge. It's a story of silence, of how a little girl learned to live with pain so heavy that words could never carry it. When I was 7, my life looked ordinary to anyone who passed by. My father, Daniel Coleman, worked at the nuclear plant and came home every evening with the same smell of oil, smoke, and whiskey. My mother, Margaret, spent her days washing clothes for neighbors, her hands cracked and tired, her eyes distant but soft. And then there was Liam, my older brother. He was 5 years older, charming, confident, the kind of boy everyone loved. Teachers praised him, neighbors adored him, and my father called him the man of the house. But beneath that perfect image lived something no one dared to see. It started with little things. Liam would walk into my room without knocking, or sit too close when I was reading. Once, while brushing my hair, his fingers lingered too long. I felt uneasy but couldn't explain why. I didn't know how to name that feeling, only that it made me wish to disappear. One night, thunder roared across the valley. I woke up to find him sitting on the edge of my bed. "I couldn't sleep," he whispered. "It's too loud." At first, I believed him. But when he wrapped his arm around me, something felt wrong. My heart raced, my breath stopped, and I just lay there, frozen. If you were a child and someone made you feel unsafe, would you know how to speak up? Or would you stay silent like I did? The next morning, I tried to tell my mother. "Mom, Liam keeps coming into my room," I said quietly. Her eyes widened for a second, but then she turned away. "He's your brother, Emma. Don't say things that'll cause problems." Her voice shook slightly, and I realized she already knew something wasn't right. She was just too afraid to admit it. That was the day I learned what silence really means. It doesn't protect. It suffocates. As weeks passed, Liam grew bolder. When my father was home, he acted innocent. But when we were alone, his smile changed. No longer the brother I once looked up to. My childhood became a waiting game between fear and darkness. Do you believe a mother's silence can hurt as deeply as cruelty itself? Sometimes, it's not the screaming that breaks you. It's the quiet. I used to sit near the wooden fence, behind our house, watching cars pass and imagining someone might see me, stop, and save me. But no one did. No one ever does. When pain hides behind polite smiles and clean curtains, that house looked peaceful from the outside. But inside, a storm was growing, and it was only the beginning. That's how my story started, with innocence fading in a home where love had turned into something unrecognizable. Don't miss the next part. Emma's nightmare deepens when Liam's control tightens, and her mother's silence becomes the loudest sound in the house. The human mind has strange ways of protecting itself. When something hurts too much, it hides it behind silence and routine. That's what I did. I pretended everything was fine, even when every cell in my body screamed that it wasn't. Liam's behavior worsened as months passed. What began with long stares and unwanted closeness turned into something darker, Something I didn't even have the words to describe. I stopped laughing. I stopped drawing. I stopped being a child. At night, I would stay awake counting seconds, praying he wouldn't come. But he always did. One evening, my father came home drunk as usual. He stumbled into the kitchen where my mother was cooking and started shouting about bills. "You never do anything right!" he yelled, slamming his fist on the table. I flinched at the sound, and Liam looked at me from across the room, his expression unreadable, almost proud. My mother didn't fight back. She just stood there, quiet, wiping her hands with the corner of her apron. That silence spread like poison through our home. I learned that night that pain doesn't always scream. It can whisper too, softly, until it becomes part of the air you breathe. Later that night, I tried once again to tell her the truth. "Mom," I whispered while she cleaned the dishes, "Liam keeps coming into my room at night." "I don't want him to." Her hands froze. The sound of dripping water filled the silence. Then, with trembling lips, she said, "He's just being protective. Don't talk nonsense." I stared at her, waiting for something. Comfort, anger, anything. But she turned her face away, and in that moment, I realized she wasn't protecting him. She was protecting herself. Would you have believed your child, even if it meant breaking your family apart? After that night, I stopped talking about it. I built walls inside my head, places where I could hide my fear. But even in silence, the memories followed me. I'd see Liam's shadow in every dark corner, hear his voice in every gust of wind that brushed against the window. At school, I tried to smile, but my teacher noticed the difference. "Emma," she said softly one morning, "you look tired. Is everything okay at home?" I wanted to say yes, to lie, and I did. Because telling the truth felt like setting fire to a house I was trapped inside. No one ever teaches you how to ask for help when the danger is family. That winter was cold. The nights were long, and I spent most of them hiding beneath my blanket, praying for morning to come faster. But one stormy night, the world fell apart again. I heard the door creak open. My body froze before I even saw him. He whispered, "Don't move." The thunder outside masked my crying. When it was over, I lay still, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was how life would always be. Quiet pain hidden under a roof that smelled like home. When morning came, my mother noticed the bruises. Her eyes watered, but she didn't say a word. She simply handed me a damp cloth and said, "You'll be fine, sweetheart." I wasn't. Do you believe silence can protect anyone? Or does it only protect the ones who cause the hurt? From that day on, something inside me changed. I no longer feared Liam. I resented him. I stopped looking down when he entered the room. I started avoiding his touch, his voice, his shadow. And even though I still couldn't speak it out loud, I made a silent promise to myself. One day, I would escape, because no matter how deep you bury the truth, it always finds a way to rise. Don't miss the next part. As Emma grows older, she begins to notice something inside her, changing. Something that will reveal the secret she's tried so hard to hide, and force her mother to face what she's ignored for years. When I turned 12, I started to understand things that I wish I never had to learn. Childhood doesn't end when you grow up. It ends the moment you stop feeling safe. And for me, that moment had already come and gone. The days at school were the only moments when I could breathe. I'd sit by the window staring at the trees outside, wondering how something could stand tall after years of storms. Maybe I admired them because I couldn't feel that strong myself. At home, Liam's behavior became unpredictable. Some days he was calm, smiling, pretending to be the brother everyone adored. Other days his silence felt dangerous. He had a way of controlling the air in the room. When he entered, even my mother stopped talking. My father, Daniel, noticed nothing. Or maybe he noticed everything and chose not to see. He was too lost in his whiskey, too proud to believe that his son could do anything wrong. One afternoon, I found my mother crying quietly in the kitchen. Her hands were trembling as she washed the dishes. "Mom," I said softly, "are you okay?" She turned to me, eyes red. "I'm fine. Go to your room, Emma." But I couldn't. Something about her sadness scared me. It felt like she was trapped too, only in a different way. I wanted to tell her that I was tired of being scared, tired of pretending that nothing was happening. But before I could speak, Liam's footsteps echoed down the hallway. My mother instantly wiped her tears and straightened her posture. Just like that, her pain disappeared behind silence again. That moment taught me something important. Sometimes people keep quiet, not because they don't care, but because they believe no one will listen. If you saw someone drowning in fear, would you speak up for them or stay silent like everyone else did for me? A few months later, my body started changing. I didn't understand at first, but soon I realized something was wrong. My stomach felt different. My clothes didn't fit the same. I was only 12. I tried to hide it, but my mother noticed. One evening, she cornered me in the small hallway and whispered, "Emma, what's happening to you?" Tears rushed down my face before I could answer. She didn't ask again. She already knew. She sat down, shaking, whispering, No, this can't be." When my father came home that night, she didn't say a word. She just served him dinner, silent, pretending everything was fine. Days later, I overheard their argument. "Daniel, she's not well," my mother said, her voice breaking. "What do you mean?" he demanded. She's with child," the sound of glass breaking followed. My father's voice turned into thunder. "What are you saying, woman? Who did this?" No one answered. That night I heard shouting, doors slamming, and then silence. My father left the house before dawn, his truck tires screeching on the wet road. He didn't come back for 3 days. My mother didn't look at me for days after that. She moved around the house like a shadow, whispering prayers under her breath. I wanted to tell her that it wasn't my fault, that I never wanted any of it, but the words never made it past my throat. Do you think forgiveness is possible when the person who failed you is the one who was supposed to protect you? I spent those weeks in fear, shame, and confusion. My body carried proof of what no one wanted to acknowledge. I was trapped inside a nightmare that I couldn't wake from, and my mother's silence made it worse than ever. But deep down, I felt something changing, not just in me but around me. Secrets like ours don't stay buried forever, and soon, the walls of our home would crack under the weight of truth. Don't miss the next part. Emma's secret begins to unravel when the truth about her pregnancy forces her mother to make an impossible choice, one that will change both their lives forever. The days after my father found out felt like walking through a house filled with ghosts. He didn't speak to me. He didn't even look at me. Every door slammed harder. Every silence grew louder. My mother, Margaret, moved around the house like someone waiting for a storm. She knew she couldn't stop. She spoke softly, avoided my eyes, and prayed longer at night. And Liam, he acted as if nothing had happened. He went to school, helped my father in the yard, and smiled at neighbors when they waved. He was the perfect son again, but every time his eyes met mine, there was something dark in them, something that said, "You'll never be free." One night, I heard my parents arguing behind their locked bedroom door. "She's 12, Daniel," my mother cried. "We can't just pretend it didn't happen." "Don't you dare spread this shame," he barked. "Do you know what people will say? What they'll think of me? What about her?" She whispered. "She's ruined. It's her fault for letting it happen." Those words shattered me. I pressed my ear to the door, praying I'd heard wrong. But I hadn't. To him, I wasn't a victim. I was a disgrace. If your own father blamed you for the pain you didn't cause, would you ever be able to forgive him? The next morning, my father packed a bag and left for work early. My mother didn't speak much that day. Her face looked pale, drained of everything except guilt. When I tried to ask her what we would do, she only said, "We'll fix it quietly. No one needs to know. Quietly." That word haunted me. Weeks passed, and my body continued to change. My school uniform no longer fit right, and whispers began following me down the hallways. Girls my age stared. Teachers looked away. Everyone knew something, but no one asked. One afternoon, I overheard 2 women outside the grocery store. "Margaret Coleman's girl," one said in a hushed tone. "She's expecting." "Did you hear?" "Impossible. She's just a child. That's what they all say, until it happens." Their words cut deeper than any wound. Shame clung to me like a shadow I couldn't escape. My mother made me stop going to school soon after. "People talk too much," she said quietly. "It's better if you stay inside." So I did. I sat in my small room, staring out the window at a world that had moved on without me. The walls felt smaller every day, and the air heavier. Sometimes I'd hear my father's truck outside. He'd come in drunk, yell about the mess his family had become, and leave again before sunrise. My mother would stand at the door crying silently. Started wondering if maybe they both hated me more for surviving. Do you think people stay silent because they're afraid, or because it's easier to pretend nothing's wrong? One night, as the crickets sang outside and the world seemed half asleep, my mother came into my room. She was holding her Bible, her hands trembling. "Emma," she said softly, "we can't keep living like this. Something has to be done." I sat up, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer directly. She just said, "God forgives, but people don't. We have to make this right." The way she said it made me cold all over, because it didn't sound like a plan. It sounded like a decision. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind brushed against the window, and the air felt different, heavy, almost warning me that something was coming. And I was right. My mother was planning something I couldn't imagine. Something she thought would erase the shame, even if it broke both of us. Don't miss the next part. In the dead of night, Margaret makes a desperate choice that changes Emma's life forever and leaves scars neither of them will ever escape. Because no matter how deep you bury the truth, it always finds a way to rise. Don't miss the next part. As Emma grows older, she begins to notice something inside her changing. Something that will reveal the secret she's tried so hard to hide and force her mother to face what she's ignored for years. That night, I barely slept. The air inside our house felt heavy, filled with something unspoken. Every sound, the ticking clock, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the wind, seemed louder than usual, as if the world itself was holding its breath. When morning came, my mother was already dressed. She had braided her hair tightly and was holding her purse. "We're going out," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes looked distant. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To visit a friend," she replied, but there was no warmth in her tone, no hint of comfort, only fear. We walked in silence down the narrow dirt road that led out of town. I watched her feet move faster than usual, her grip tight around my wrist. She didn't look at me once. After what felt like forever, we stopped in front of a small house on the edge of the woods. An older woman opened the door. A midwife, I later realized. The look in her eyes told me she already knew why we were there. My mother whispered something I couldn't hear, and the woman nodded, motioning us inside. I remember the smell of herbs, the dim light, and the faint sound of rain against the roof. Everything felt cold. My mother sat beside me, holding my hand, whispering, "It'll be over soon. Just close your eyes." I didn't understand what she meant, until the pain began. What happened next still lives in my nightmares. The woman's voice echoed, my mother's sobs mixed with mine, and the world spun into a blur of agony. I screamed for it to stop, but no one did. The pain tore through me, and when it finally ended, I was left hollow. both in body and spirit. When I woke up hours later, my mother was gone. The woman handed me a small cup of water and said, "Your mother did what she thought was best." Best! The word felt like a wound. Would you ever forgive someone who hurt you just to protect themselves? When we returned home, my mother didn't speak. She moved through the house quietly, as if afraid her own footsteps would betray her guilt. That night she left a bowl of soup by my bed, but never looked me in the eye. I stared at her silhouette in the doorway and whispered, "Why?" She didn't answer. She just turned away, her shoulders shaking with silent tears. That was the moment I realized love and betrayal can live in the same heart. The days that followed blurred together. My father never asked what happened. He didn't need to. The silence between him and my mother said enough. He drank more, shouted more, and blamed the world for what he refused to face. Liam, on the other hand, walked around as if nothing had changed. His smirk returned, his confidence untouched. Sometimes he'd glance at me from across the room. That same cold expression that reminded me he'd taken something from me I could never get back. I started avoiding mirrors. I couldn't bear to look at my reflection because every time I did, I saw the girl who hadn't been saved by anyone. Do you believe some wounds ever heal? Or do they just learn to hide beneath the skin? A week later, I overheard my parents talking again. "It's done," my mother said quietly. "No one will ever know." My father grunted. "Good. I don't want to hear another word about it." Their words pierced through me. I wasn't a person to them anymore, just a problem they had buried. That night, I packed a small bag. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I waited until everyone was asleep, then stepped outside into the cool night air. The road stretched out before me, dark and endless. For the first time in years, I felt the faintest flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. Don't miss the next part. Emma's escape leads her into a world she's never known before. But the ghosts of her past are not done following her yet. The night I left home, the air was heavy with silence. Even the crickets seemed to stop singing, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see if I'd really go through with it. My feet trembled, but my heart was certain. Staying would mean dying a little more each day. I walked for hours, barefoot on the cold dirt road. The stars were hidden behind clouds, and the only sound was the distant hum of the wind through the trees. I didn't know where I was heading. I just knew I couldn't go back. When dawn came, my legs were aching and my throat dry. I finally reached a small roadside diner. The smell of coffee and baked bread drifted through the door. I stood outside for a long moment, afraid to walk in, afraid someone might recognize me. But hunger eventually won. Inside, an older woman with kind eyes noticed me immediately. "You all right, sweetheart?" she asked. I hesitated before nodding. "Just hungry," I said quietly. She poured me a cup of coffee and placed a slice of toast in front of me. "You look too young to be out here alone." I stared at the floor, unsure how to respond. "I'm fine," I whispered. She gave a faint smile. No one that age is ever fine. Her name was Mrs. Turner, and she didn't ask too many questions. She let me sit in the corner all morning, pretending to read a newspaper while I tried not to cry. If someone showed you kindness when you least deserved it, would you trust them, or would fear make you run again? By afternoon, she brought me a small sandwich wrapped in paper. "Take this," she said softly. "You remind me of my daughter." I wanted to tell her everything, the truth about home, my mother, my brother, but the words stuck in my throat. So I just nodded and said, "Thank you." Before I left, she touched my shoulder gently and whispered, "Sometimes running away isn't weakness, it's survival." Those words stayed with me. For 2 days, I wandered along the highway, hiding behind gas stations and sleeping in empty barns. My feet were blistered and my stomach growled constantly. The world outside my home was big, cruel, but strangely freeing. Then one evening, I met Mr. Harris, a truck driver who stopped at the roadside to fill his tank. He was middle-aged, rough around the edges, but kind. "Where you headed, kid?" he asked. "Anywhere but home," I replied without thinking. He studied me for a moment, then sighed. "All right, hop in. I'll take you as far as Knoxville." I hesitated but climbed in. I didn't have much choice. For the first time, I felt like I was leaving my past behind, mile by mile. The ride was quiet. He didn't pry, didn't ask my name until we were halfway there. When he did, I lied. "I'm Anna," I said. He nodded and didn't question it. We stopped at a gas station for food. He bought me a sandwich and a bottle of water. "You got somewhere safe to go?" he asked. I shook my head. He looked thoughtful. "There's a small church in Knoxville. They help girls like you. You go there and tell them Harris sent you." That was the first time someone saw me. Not as a burden, not as a secret, but as a person who deserved to be helped. Do you believe small moments of kindness can change a life? Because that one did for me. When the truck finally stopped outside Knoxville, he handed me a few dollars and said, "Don't look back, kid. Just keep walking forward." I wanted to thank him, but the words caught in my throat, so I simply nodded and walked away, clutching the paper bag in my hands. As the sun set behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Don't miss the next part. Emma's new beginning in Knoxville brings a brief glimpse of peace, until a face from her past reappears and threatens to unravel everything she's built. Knoxville looked different from anything I had ever seen. Busy streets, strangers rushing past, laughter echoing from cafes. For someone who had spent her whole life trapped in a small town, it felt like stepping into another world, one that didn't know my name or my story. The church Mr. Harris told me about stood on the edge of town, small but peaceful, with ivy climbing its stone walls. I hesitated before going inside, unsure if I belonged there. The sound of the bell ringing felt too holy for someone carrying my kind of pain. A woman in her 50s approached me with a warm smile. "You must be the girl Harris mentioned," she said gently. "I'm Sister Abigail." Her eyes were kind, but filled with the kind of sadness that only comes from seeing too much suffering. She led me to a small room with a bed, a blanket, and a Bible on the nightstand. "You can stay here for a while," she said softly. "You're safe now. Safe." That word felt strange, almost foreign. Days turned into weeks, and for the first time, I started sleeping through the night. The sisters at the church didn't ask about my past. They just treated me with quiet kindness, giving me meals, helping me wash my clothes, and letting me sit in the garden to read. I would watch the sunlight through the leaves and think, maybe this is what peace feels like. But peace, for me, never lasted long. One afternoon, while helping Sister Abigail sort through boxes of donations, she placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "You have strong eyes, Emma. They've seen too much for your age." I tried to smile, but tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. She didn't press for answers. Instead, she said, "You don't have to talk about what happened, but when you're ready, you must forgive yourself for surviving. If someone told you to forgive yourself for something that wasn't your fault, could you?" Slowly, I began helping around the church more, cooking, cleaning, even reading stories to the children who came for Sunday lessons. For a little while, I forgot what pain felt like. Until one day, it all came rushing back. It was early evening when I went into town to buy supplies. The air smelled like rain, and the streets glistened with puddles. I was walking past a hardware store when a familiar voice called my name. "Emma?" I froze. That voice, the one I'd spent months trying to forget, belonged to Liam. I turned slowly, and there he was. He looked older, rougher, but those same cold green eyes stared right into me. My chest tightened. It felt as if the air had been ripped away. He smiled faintly, tilting his head. Didn't think I'd ever see you again. I couldn't speak. My legs trembled as my mind raced back to all the nights I tried to erase. How did you find me? I finally managed to whisper. Didn't need to. You were never hard to follow. That sentence sent chills down my spine. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think you can just run away and forget me? I stepped back, shaking my head. Leave me alone, Liam. But his smile didn't fade. You're still the same little girl who thinks she can hide. I ran before he could say another word. I didn't stop until I reached the church. My lungs burned, and tears blurred my vision. Sister Abigail found me kneeling on the steps, shaking. What happened, child? She asked, pulling me into her arms. But I couldn't answer. I just whispered. He found me. Do you think we ever truly escape our past, or does it find us no matter how far we run? That night I didn't sleep. Every creak, every whisper of wind felt like footsteps approaching my door. The safety I'd built began to crumble, piece by piece. Because no matter how far I had come, Liam's shadow had followed me into my new life. And I knew, deep down, he wasn't done. Don't miss the next part. When Liam's obsession pushes him too far, Emma is forced to confront her greatest fear, and the truth that survival sometimes means fighting back. That night, the fear I thought I'd buried came back stronger than ever. Every shadow in the church hall looked like him. Every sound outside the window made my heart race. Sleep refused to come, and all I could hear was his voice echoing in my head. You were never hard to follow. By morning, I looked pale and hollow. Sister Abigail noticed immediately. Emma, you haven't touched your breakfast, she said softly. I tried to smile, but my hands trembled. I saw someone I used to know, I whispered. Someone who shouldn't have found me. Her eyes darkened with understanding. She didn't ask for names. She just said, you're safe here. No one will hurt you. But I wasn't sure I believed that anymore. That afternoon, the church was unusually quiet. Most of the sisters had gone to visit a nearby shelter. I stayed behind, helping clean the old wooden pews. The smell of polish filled the air. For a few moments, it almost felt peaceful again. Until I heard a knock on the front door. It was firm, deliberate. Something in me froze. I hesitated, then slowly walked to the entryway. Through the stained glass window, I saw a familiar figure standing outside. Liam. My pulse thundered in my ears. I stepped back, my breathing shallow. He shouldn't have been able to find me here. Not in this place. Not after all this time. The knocking grew louder. Emma, his voice called. Calm. Too calm. I just want to talk. Talk? That word from him meant danger. I ran toward the side hall, searching for Sister Abigail. But the building was empty. The silence felt unbearable. He knocked again, this time harder. You can't hide forever. We're family, remember? I wanted to scream, but fear held me still. I pressed my back to the wall, clutching my cross pendant like it could shield me. Would you open the door if the person behind it was the one who once destroyed your life? Then, all at once, the knocking stopped. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. Slowly, I gathered the courage to peek through the side window. The steps were empty. But when I turned around, he was already inside. Liam stood in the hallway, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. You really thought you could hide from me? He said softly. I stumbled backward, my voice barely a whisper. How did you get in? He held up a small metal key. Found one just like it. You should know by now. Doors don't stop me. Every part of me wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. Why are you doing this? I asked, trembling. His expression changed. The same cruel smirk I remembered from childhood. Because you belong to me, Emma. You always have. Those words ripped through me. Years of silence, pain, and fear came crashing down all at once. I felt my throat tighten. But this time, something inside me broke free instead of breaking down. I reached for the broom handle near the pews and gripped it tightly. You don't own me, I said. my voice shaking but firm. He took a step forward, mocking laughter escaping his lips. "You think you can fight me?" But I wasn't that frightened little girl anymore. I swung the broom as hard as I could. It hit his arm and he stumbled back. "Get out!" I screamed, louder than I ever had in my life. "Don't ever come near me again." For a moment, shock flashed across his face. Then, without a word, he turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the empty hallway. I collapsed to the floor, shaking, gasping for air. Sister Abigail rushed in moments later, her eyes wide. "What happened?" she asked, kneeling beside me. Through tears, I whispered, "He found me, but I made him leave." Her hand squeezed mine. "You did the right thing, Emma. Fear only wins when you stop fighting." Do you believe one act of courage can erase years of fear? Because that night, I finally took my first breath as someone free. Don't miss the next part. Emma's fight for freedom is far from over, because Liam's departure isn't the end. It's only the beginning of his revenge. After that night, I didn't leave my room for 2 days. Every sound outside made me flinch. Even the creak of a floorboard or the whistle of the wind sent my heart racing. Sister Abigail stayed close. She prayed beside me, sat with me in silence, and kept reminding me, "He's gone, Emma. You're safe now." But safety didn't feel real anymore. It felt like a fragile dream that could break the moment I closed my eyes. I had spent my whole life running. From my home, from my past, from the man who had stolen everything innocent from me. And now that I had finally stood up to him, I realized how much strength fear had taken from me all those years. 2 days later, Sister Abigail made me sit with her in the garden. "Emma," she said gently, "you can't live in hiding forever. You have a right to breathe freely." I looked at her hands resting on her lap, rough from years of work but warm and steady. "What if he comes back?" I whispered. She smiled sadly. "Then you face him again. But this time, not as the child he once hurt, as the woman he no longer controls." Her words sank deep into me. If the people who once broke you returned to your life, would you find the strength to face them? Or would you run again? That night, I prayed for the first time in years. Not for escape, not for forgiveness, just for courage. But courage is never simple. It often arrives when you're most afraid. The following week, Sister Abigail contacted a local counselor, Mrs. Green, who worked with women who had escaped abusive homes. She visited the church and sat across from me with a notepad and kind eyes. "You've been through more than most adults ever will," she said. "But you survived. That means something." Talking to her felt like slowly tearing off bandages from wounds that had never healed. Every memory was sharp, painful, but necessary. I told her everything. From my brother's first touch to the night I ran away. When I finished, she didn't look at me with pity. She said quietly, "You were just a child. None of this was your fault." Those words broke me, because no one had ever said them before. Weeks passed, and for the first time I started rebuilding myself piece by piece. I helped at the church more, read stories to children during evening gatherings, and wrote in a journal that Sister Abigail gave me. Writing became my medicine. Every word I wrote felt like taking back something he had stolen. But peace never stays untouched. One rainy evening, as the church bells echoed across the courtyard, Sister Abigail hurried into the hall, her face pale. "Emma," she said, "there's someone asking for you." My breath caught. "Who?" She hesitated. "A man. He said he's your brother." The room spun. My hands went cold. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it, but the fear in her eyes told me it was true. I wanted to run again. My instinct screamed at me to hide, but something stronger inside whispered, "No, not this time." When I stepped outside, the rain was falling hard. Liam stood under a streetlight across the courtyard, his clothes soaked, his expression unreadable. "You shouldn't have come," I said, my voice trembling. He smiled faintly. "You can't keep me out of your life, Emma. We're family." I shook my head. "Family doesn't destroy each other." His eyes darkened. "You've turned them against me. You made me the monster." I took a step forward, my voice steady. "You were always the monster. You just never wanted to see it." For the first time, he looked shaken. The rain fell between us like a curtain of memory. Every scream, every tear, every night we both remembered. "Leave," I said firmly. "If you ever come near me again, I'll tell everyone what you did. Every single thing." He stared at me for a long moment, then turned away and disappeared into the storm. Do you believe confronting your past truly sets you free? Or does it just teach you to live with it? That night I cried, not from fear but from release. The girl who once hid under her blanket had finally found her voice. But deep inside, I knew Liam's story wasn't finished. People like him rarely disappear quietly. Don't miss the next part. As Emma tries to move on, a letter arrives that pulls her back into the darkness, one that threatens to destroy the fragile peace she's just begun to build. It had been nearly 3 months since the last time I saw Liam. The nights were quieter now, the air lighter. For the first time in years, I could walk through the church garden without constantly glancing over my shoulder. But healing isn't peace. It's work. It's waking up every day and convincing yourself that the past no longer defines you, even when it still whispers in your mind. Sister Abigail said I was stronger now. She was right. I wasn't the same girl who had run barefoot through the darkness that night. I had scars, but they were mine, and they reminded me that I had survived. One afternoon, while cleaning the reading room, I noticed an envelope slipped under the door. My name was written on it in shaky handwriting. My heart skipped. For a moment, I hoped it was just another church letter, maybe from the children I taught. But when I opened it, the world went silent. Inside was a note written in familiar scrawls. "You can't erase me. You'll always be part of me. I'll see you soon." My hands trembled as I read it again. The words were short, but they carried years of fear. Would you ever truly feel safe if your past could write you a letter? Sister Abigail found me sitting on the floor, the paper crushed in my hand. "Emma," she said gently. "What happened?" I handed her the letter. Her face tightened as she read it. "We'll call the police," she said immediately. But I shook my head. "They won't believe me. They never did." "Then we'll make them believe you this time," she replied. "You're not alone anymore." Her words meant everything. The police came that evening. They took the letter, asked questions, and promised to keep watch. But I could tell from their tone they didn't understand the kind of danger I was in. Monsters like Liam didn't leave evidence. They left fear. That night I barely slept. Every sound outside my window felt like footsteps. Every shadow looked like him. The next morning I decided I couldn't let him control my life again. I met with Mrs. Green, the counselor who had helped me before. I showed her the letter, my hands shaking. "He's trying to remind you that he still has power," she said. "But he doesn't. Not unless you give it to him." Her words stayed with me all day. If the person who once destroyed you tried to come back into your life, would you fight or hide again? That afternoon, I joined the women's support group at the church for the first time. There were 8 of us, all with different stories, but the same kind of pain. When it was my turn to speak, I hesitated. Then I said quietly, "I used to think silence kept me safe, but now I know silence only protects the one who hurts you." As I spoke, I saw tears in the eyes of the women around me. They understood without words, and for the first time, I didn't feel alone. That evening, as the sun set over Knoxville, I sat on the church steps, watching the sky turn orange and gold. I thought about how far I'd come, from a terrified child hiding in the dark to a woman who could finally speak her truth aloud. But deep inside, a small part of me still felt uneasy. I knew Liam wasn't done. The letter wasn't a goodbye. It was a warning. Still, for once, I wasn't afraid of him. Because this time, I wasn't the only one standing. Take a second to like and subscribe, and press the bell icon to stay with me for more stories like this one. Don't miss the next part. When another unexpected letter arrives, Emma must decide whether to confront Liam face to face, or risk losing the fragile peace she's finally built. The morning after the first letter, I woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight streamed through the stained glass window, coloring the walls with soft shades of red and gold. For a brief second, I felt peace, until I saw the second envelope on the windowsill. It hadn't been there the night before. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The same handwriting, the same cold familiarity. My hands trembled as I opened it. You talk too much now. Maybe you've forgotten who I am. Don't make me remind you. There was no signature this time, but I didn't need one. I could feel his presence in every word. Fear returned like a storm I thought had passed. Would you have the strength to read a threat from the person who once broke you? Sister Abigail came running when she heard me cry out. She took the letter from my hand, her eyes narrowing. He's escalating, she said. We need to do something before this gets worse. We called the police again. This time they sent a detective named Officer Collins. He was calm, professional, but his tone carried a doubt I'd heard too many times before. Do you have any reason to believe this man is nearby? He asked. He found me before, I said softly. He can find me again. He nodded, jotting down notes. We'll increase patrol around the church, but it might help if you stayed somewhere else for a while, just as a precaution. Sister Abigail disagreed immediately. She's safe here. This place is sacred. But deep down, I wasn't sure anywhere was sacred anymore. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the words in the letter, the sound of his voice, the memory of his footsteps. The fear was old, familiar. But there was something different this time. I wasn't powerless anymore. The next day, Mrs. Green came to visit me again. I handed her both letters. She read them quietly, then looked up. He's trying to control you through fear, she said. You have a choice, Emma. You can keep hiding, or you can confront the ghost he's become. I didn't answer. The thought of seeing Liam again made my chest tighten, but part of me knew she was right. If facing your fear meant risking everything again, would you do it just to end the pain? Later that week, a stranger approached me after the evening service. He was tall, wearing a dark coat, and kept his hood low. I stiffened immediately. Emma, he said, his voice soft but uncertain. It wasn't Liam. It was someone younger, a man in his mid-20s. He handed me a folded note. He told me to give you this. My stomach dropped. Who told you? He hesitated. A man. He said his name was Liam. Before I could ask more, the stranger turned and walked away. My fingers shook as I opened the paper. If you won't come to me, I'll come for you. You can't hide behind prayers forever. That was the moment I decided. I wasn't going to run anymore. Sister Abigail and Mrs. Green sat with me that night as I made a decision I never thought I would. I want to meet him, I said quietly. They both looked at me in shock. Emma, that's dangerous, Mrs. Green said. I know, I whispered. But if I don't end this now, he'll keep coming, and I can't live like this anymore. The room fell silent. Sister Abigail finally reached across the table, her hand over mine. Then you won't face him alone. I looked at the candle flickering between us and realized something. For the first time, my fear wasn't louder than my will to survive. Take a second to like and subscribe, and press the bell icon to stay with me for more stories like this one. Don't miss the next part. Emma agrees to face Liam one last time. But what begins as confrontation soon turns into a chilling revelation that changes everything she thought she knew. The decision to meet Liam haunted me through the night. Every flicker of candlelight across my wall reminded me of his face, those cold eyes that had once watched me break in silence. But I knew I couldn't live in fear anymore. This had to end. Sister Abigail arranged for the meeting to happen in a public place, a small cafe near the outskirts of town. "He won't dare try anything in daylight," she said, though her voice didn't sound convinced. Mrs. Green insisted on coming too. "You won't go alone," she told me. "Whatever he's planning, we'll be there to make sure you're safe." Still, the thought of seeing him again made my stomach twist into knots. The morning arrived gray and heavy with rain. I wore a long coat and kept my hands buried in my pockets, trying to keep my heartbeat steady. As we drove toward the cafe, my reflection in the window looked like someone I barely recognized. Older, braver, but still scarred. When we arrived, the bell above the cafe door chimed softly. The smell of coffee and wet pavement filled the air. I scanned the room, and there he was. Liam sat in the corner, his eyes already on me. He looked different, thinner, his hair longer, his expression unreadable. But the darkness in his gaze was still there. He smiled faintly as I approached. "You came." I sat down slowly. "I'm not here for you. I'm here for myself." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The rain outside drummed against the glass, filling the silence between us. Finally, he leaned forward. "You've changed," he said. "I had to," I replied. "You made sure of that." A bitter smile crossed his lips. "I never wanted to hurt you, Emma. You know that." I felt anger rise in my chest. "You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed everything good I ever believed in." He looked down at his hands, his voice low. "You think I don't remember what I did? I see it every night." I wanted to believe him, but guilt doesn't erase evil. Would you forgive someone who said they were sorry, even if sorry came too late? "You wrote those letters," I said quietly. He didn't deny it. "I had to make you listen." "By threatening me?" "I just wanted to talk." I stared at him, disbelief twisting inside me. "You wanted control." "You always did." He sighed, his tone softening. "Emma, I've lost everything. Our parents. They never forgave me. I don't even know who I am anymore." I looked at him for a long time. For years I had wished to hear him admit what he did, and now that he had, it felt hollow. "Too little, too late. I forgive you," I finally said, my voice trembling. "But I'll never forget, and I'll never let you near me again." His face fell. "You can't mean that." "I do." He stared at me for a moment, then whispered, "You've changed too much." "Good," I said softly. "That means I survived you." Mrs. Green stepped forward then, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. "We're done here," she said. "This conversation is over." Liam didn't move. He just watched me walk away, his eyes dark with something between anger and sorrow. As I stepped outside, the rain hit my face like cold glass, but I felt lighter than I had in years. The chains he'd wrapped around me for so long had finally broken. Do you believe that facing the person who ruined you can finally set you free? Because that day, I learned it could. That night, I stood in the church garden under the drizzle, feeling the earth beneath my feet, breathing in the quiet. For the first time, the silence didn't scare me. It comforted me. Take a second to like and subscribe, and press the bell icon to stay with me for more stories like this one. Don't miss the next part. Just when Emma begins to rebuild her peace, an unexpected visit from a police officer reveals a chilling truth about Liam's final words. A few days had passed since the meeting with Liam, and I tried convincing myself it was finally over. The church returned to its quiet rhythm, the sound of hymns in the morning, the laughter of children in the courtyard, the peace of routine. But peace, for me, always came with an aftertaste of fear. Every time the phone rang or a car slowed near the church, I felt a familiar chill crawl up my spine. Still, I reminded myself of what I'd done. I had faced him. I had walked away. For the first time, I had chosen my own ending. Then one rainy afternoon, Officer Collins showed up again. His uniform was damp, his expression tense. "Emma," he said quietly. "We need to talk." Something in his tone made my stomach turn. We sat inside Sister Abigail's office. The smell of candle wax and old wood filled the room. Collins hesitated for a moment, then said, "There was an incident last night. Liam Coleman was found near the river." My hands froze around my cup of tea. "What kind of incident?" He exhaled. "It looks like suicide. He left a note. The air left my lungs. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or sit still. My body felt weightless, like the ground had disappeared beneath me. Sister Abigail placed her hand on mine, whispering a prayer under her breath. I finally asked, "What did the note say?" Collins opened his notepad and read slowly. "Tell Emma I'm sorry. I couldn't live with what I've done." The room spun. I stared at the candle flame until it blurred through tears. Would hearing an apology after someone's gone bring you peace? Or only reopen every wound they left behind? That night I couldn't sleep. His words replayed in my mind like a haunting echo. "I'm sorry." 2 simple words that carried years of silence. Part of me felt angry. Angry that he had taken the coward's way out. Angry that he had stolen my chance to say everything I had held inside for years. Another part felt relief, because the monster was finally gone. But the strangest feeling of all was pity. For the first time, I saw Liam not as the boy who destroyed me, but as the broken man he had become. The next morning, I went to the river where they had found him. The sky was gray, the water restless. I stood at the edge, the cold wind biting my cheeks. I whispered, "You took everything from me, but I'm still here, and I forgive you. Not for you, but for me." As the wind carried my voice away, something inside me loosened. The guilt, the fear, the shame. It all began to fade. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant freeing myself from the weight of him. When I returned to the church, Sister Abigail hugged me tightly. "He can't hurt you anymore," she said softly. "I know," I whispered. "But I wish he had learned to heal before he destroyed everything around him." That night, I sat by the window with my journal and began writing again. Not about pain, but about survival. Each word felt like light returning to a dark room. Do you believe closure always comes from the end of a story, or from the strength it leaves behind? For the first time in years, I slept peacefully. No nightmares, no voices, just the sound of rain against the window in the quiet. Heartbeat of freedom. Realize that some stories don't end with revenge or tragedy. They end with release. Take a second to like and subscribe, and press the bell icon to stay with me for more stories like this one. Don't miss the next part. Emma's story isn't quite over yet, because the letter Liam left behind hides a truth no one was ready to uncover. A week had passed since Liam's death, yet his presence lingered like a faint shadow. Every corner of my life felt quieter, heavier. People around me spoke in soft voices, as if the silence itself might shatter. The police returned once more, not to question me, but to deliver something. An envelope found near Liam's body. My name was written across it in his familiar handwriting. My hands trembled as I took it. For hours, I couldn't bring myself to open it. Part of me was afraid of what it might say. Another part needed to know. When I finally did, I found a single sheet of paper inside, covered in messy lines of ink. Words that looked like they were written through tears. "Emma, you'll never believe this, but I remember everything now. Every moment, every scream, every lie I told myself to forget what I did. I blamed everyone else, our parents, the house, the silence. But it was me. I wanted to reach out to you before I gave up. You deserve to know that I never stopped seeing you as the little sister who looked for hope in the dark. Maybe if I had been brave enough to face my own demons earlier, none of this would have happened. I'm sorry. Liam." Tears blurred the ink as I read. For years I had dreamed of hearing those words, but not like this, not at the end of everything. Would forgiveness still matter when the person you forgave was already gone? I folded the letter and placed it gently inside my journal. For the first time, I didn't cry out of pain. I cried out of release. Sister Abigail sat beside me later that evening, her voice soft. "His apology can't erase what he did, Emma," she said. "But it can free you from what he left behind." I nodded slowly. "I don't hate him anymore. I just pity him." She smiled faintly. "That means your heart is healing." Over the next few weeks, I began to rebuild my life one quiet day at a time. I joined the Women's Outreach Program, helping others who had lived through what I once did. When they spoke of fear and shame, I understood every word, because I had been there too. Sometimes, when the sun set behind the church, I'd sit by the garden where it all began and whisper to myself, "You survived." Healing didn't come in a single moment. It came slowly, in forgiveness, in tears, in the strength to smile again. Do you believe healing is something we find or something we build piece by piece? Months later, on a clear spring morning, I visited the river again. The water shimmered softly under the sunlight. I placed a single white flower on the bank and whispered, "I hope you finally found peace, Liam." The wind brushed my hair gently, almost like an answer. I turned to leave, knowing this would be the last time I came here, because this chapter of my life, no matter how painful, was over. Back at the church, Sister Abigail handed me a small key. "We're opening a new shelter downtown," she said. "I want you to help lead it." I stared at her, speechless. "Me?" she nodded. "You've lived the pain. That's what makes you the one who can guide others through it." And in that moment, I realized something. Sometimes, surviving isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of someone else's hope. That night, I lit a candle in the chapel and watched its flame dance in the darkness. The same darkness that once terrified me now felt calm, almost sacred, because this time, I wasn't afraid of it. Take a second to like and subscribe, and press the bell icon to stay with me for more stories like this one. Emma's journey reminds us, no matter how deep the pain runs, light always finds its way through. Healing isn't forgetting. It's forgiving yourself for surviving. And also add, where are you watching from? Maybe each of us has been at the same point, when kindness is tested, when lines blue, when love and self-respect force us to choose. If this story touched you, leave a comment and tell me what you think. Or if you have been through something similar, every share, every time you hit subscribe, does not help me to continue this journey. It helps the stories of grandparents who learn to say no a little farther. Thank you for walking the whole way with me, so that today, in a home full of sunsets and roses, I can smile and say, at this age, I'm still here, still free, and at last, still at peace.